funky. Politics.
Funky Politics Education Reform Series is presented by the National Civil Rights Museum, sponsored by Memphis Education Fund and Southwest Tennessee Community College. We'd like to thank our media partner, Chalkbeat Tennessee.
Funky Nassau, Funky Nassau, Funky Nassau, Funky Nassau, Funky Nassau.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Tequilla Network. In our studio this evening, we're visiting with Tequilla Banks, Executive Vice President of TNTP, formerly known as the New Teacher Project, and also Tomeka Hart, Senior Program Officer with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And as always, you got DC here, Doc Ward just sitting here, and we are just having a wonderful conversation with just two beautiful ladies. Am I right?
Well, we're talking about
smart.
Well, we're talking about something that's very,
smart.
very important.
Yeah.
And it's education. How do we teach the children? How do we, move on the educational model in a manner that's effective for all the citizens? And one of the things that we were just talking about, we've been talking about over and over again, is that there needs to be more collective, or more consensus amongst all of the entities that really indirectly and directly control the educational system, which is community development, economic development, and educational development. And I really don't see how you can have any set of tests that can determine how one or the other is proficient when you're not having everybody at the table. I mean, do you all see that? You all understand what I'm saying, or am I missing something along the way?
No. I think you're
I didn't ask you because we know you're not educated at all.
No.
But I'm asking.
Still into this stuff.
No, but I'm asking. Tomeka, Tequilla, is that? Are we on the right path with
Fair
that?
assessment.
I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I mean, what you're really talking about is what we would refer to as, this big problem of poverty. And so it's not about holding just one group or bucket accountable. It's about each of those entities, as you mentioned, kind of doing their part. How I think of it, there's home and community related things that influence the outcomes for a child, and then there's also school related things. And so when you think about what the school and the educational systems can do, that's where a lot of the reform work is focused. As Tomeka said, in times past, education wasn't as accountable and didn't really focus on making sure everybody was getting, being set up for success.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask you this. We've got, like you said, so many entities.
Right.
Have we lost focus that it's the child that comes here every day that's not being prepared to succeed after the 12th grade?
So, I mean, you're here in a lot of language now. We're saying student-centered, right? Yeah. And so curriculum should be student-centered, and the way we deliver instruction and the way we operate schools should be student-centered. And so if we keep our focus on the child, we say that, but if you start listening to conversation often, the conversation is about the adults. It usually still turns to what's good for the adults. And it's tough, right? Because it's adults who are operating the system. So it's not like you can say you can't tend to the needs of the adults because the adults are running the system. But you're right. If we start thinking about what is good for the child, that could make some of the tough decisions that have to be made more easy to be made, at least easily understood of why we're making them.
Yeah, I would agree. I think early in the reform, this most recent reform movement, we made the mistake of saying, we don't care about adults. We only care about children, and not recognizing that what happens to children, what happens to the adults and their families and their communities, that affects them. I mean, they don't live 24 hours in their school. And so now you hear more reformers that are rightly and smartly thinking about how to make decisions that are best both obviously for students, but without at the detriment of families and communities.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Tequilla Network. In our studio this evening, we're visiting with Tomeka Hart, Senior Program Officer for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, as well as Tequilla Banks, Executive Vice President of TNTP, formerly known as the New Teacher Project.
But let's get down to it, though. How much of this is reform?
Yeah.
And how much of this is redefining or redefinition? Because I think they say reforming it.
Why'd you point at me when you said deform?
Okay. Freudian slip, okay?
Wow.
But okay. when we're saying reform, we kind of talked about when was the last reform?
Yeah.
We're working at a system where once you had segregated educational system, now integrated educational system. Now a system where you have a lot of white flight and the results of that. It's not necessarily that the system is broken per se. It's that I think the focus that we're looking at is from a time that doesn't exist anymore. So does that require reform, or do we just need to catch up to what exists today? And is catching up to exist today actually reform, or is that just catching up with the work you all do? I mean, am I?
I think it's a really good question. There's a historian, an educational historian that I love. I think is probably more on point than most at Harvard, Patricia Alberg Graham. She talks about the aims of education and the focus of what it's been in our country, since we've been in existence. And she talks about, during the immigration era, we put on the backs of schools what we as a broader society didn't want to deal with. And so we put on the backs of schools to focus on assimilation for the immigrants. Right. During the Industrial Revolution, we put on the backs of schools to make sure that students, were adjusting to live in urban centers. Then during the Civil Rights era, we put on the backs of schools to focus on access, right, for, minority students. I think we're still defining what this latest period is. I think it's in process. I do think it's still reform because we're struggling, as to figure out how to get a workforce that can take care of themselves but also be globally competitive at the same time, and we're failing, frankly.
Wow. So then basically what we've got is a social side of it, and then you've got the technical side of it. Yeah. You still got to teach, but then you're trying to teach in a manner that I guess, allows the students to be able to learn and retain and succeed. Is that where we're going with this?
I think so. I think, No Child Left Behind, and then, the other legislations that have followed have really been focused on making sure that all students were achieving. I mean, that's what we would probably like to describe it as the achievement era. But because of the way that we gamed the systems, we lowered standards that Tomeka described.
You said we gamed the system?
We did. We wanted to. We wanted to say that students
you were juking the stats. Not you personally.
Not me personally.
You would never do that to Quinn.
But you're saying that we would.
We as a society, yes, we lied to parents and said that your child is graduating from high school ready to take care of themselves, ready for the workforce, or ready for college, and they weren't. It was a flat out lie.
Well, and I would say so. Governor Bredesen, former Governor Bredesen of Tennessee. Right. He acknowledged that. That's so around 2007, right, the U.S. National Chamber, said to Tennessee, "You a liar." Gave us an F in truth in advertising because we were saying upwards of 88% of our students were proficient, right, in reading and math. But according to the national measures, only 23% of our kids were proficient in reading and math. This is the entire state of Tennessee. This is not Memphis, right? And
across that country, that number was only about 32%. So we were way lower than the national, but still the whole nation wasn't doing great.
Right. So the nation was doing terrible.
And this was declared in 2000.
It was about 2007.
And so those 2007 graduates, do the math here. 2007.
I
didn't go to school back then.
8th grade. So this was, I think it was third grade reading and math, and 8th grade.
So these kids were in the 3rd grade in 2008, and they were moving on up. So, 9 years later, which is next year.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
these kids are still part of that stat juking era.
Right. So so
we interrupted it.
Right. Exactly. Okay. We interrupt, and the data. So I don't know that that's exactly right because this report was in 2007. I don't know that the data was when the data what data they were.
But it was for a previous period though. There were kids actually graduated though still.
Absolutely, and so that's what I'm saying. So when
that are still young and part of the workforce today, these are our millennials. These are our folks that we're looking at to walk into corporate America and take jobs here in the community.
Right, and you have to keep in mind those measures are a snapshot in time because that's what Tequilla was starting to say. So then 2009, right after that came. So the report was 2007. 2009 is when Governor Bredesen started the trend that Tennessee is on now, changing our standards. We increased our standards. We started making it harder, but being more accurate around being able to tell what our students are doing. But you're right, though, if you have a system that's set up to tell people what they want to hear. And so then what started happening when we start measuring growth you start to look at systems in schools that we told were doing well and realize you're not doing well. So when you said the 7% number of college ready, in the country is like 23%.
Wow.
Like in the entire, I mean, so we're still graduating. Now we say that's a number that's saying on every test of the ACT, they're meeting a college ready benchmark, right? Average, if you're making around 21 or 22 on the ACT, you can probably consider college ready, but that don't mean that you made it on every score. So there's probably more students making 21 than the 7% number that you.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network. In our studio this evening, we've got Tequilla Banks, Executive Vice President of TNTP, formerly known as the New Teacher Project, and Tomeka Hart, former commissioner of the Board of Commissioners, the Board of Education here in the city of Memphis, senior program officer with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Inequity.
Yeah, but I want to
versus equity.
I want to relate back to one more thing and get to inequity, because that's a big thing. Because right now, back on millennials, one thing that's a common statistic about millennials is that this will be the first generation that has not done as well as their parents, previous generation. So if we look at it from an educational standpoint, and whatever years you want to try to put that group that's between 18 and 37 or 38 or whatever they are. Before, these are kids that came sort of after No Child Left Behind, a good swath of them. But their parents, they didn't have all these measurements. And if we're trying to say, well, kids, we didn't have the measurements and we didn't have the same tools, but you had parents that did well, in the world, much better than kids are doing now, with more technology, and more opportunity seemingly. So what's the breakdown? What's happening here? Where we've got more ability to measure, more ability to actually track stats, more technology to give the kids, but yet you have reports saying that this group of people, of children, are going to be less and achieve less than their parents have. Is that an option that they're just exercising, or is it? I mean, what's going on?
I mean, our parents, let's be honest, our parents were all educated in the system that was creating them for the types of jobs that were available then. So, I mean, my own father, Malone and Hyde, Firestone, those jobs are no longer here, right? You think about the kids now and the jobs that are going to be available to them. They have to be able to think critically. They can't just read, see spot run and think that they're going to make it in the world. And unfortunately, too many of our kids can't even read by third grade on their grade level. And so it's about preparing them for the types of jobs now, and that's different. And our big education systems have been stuck in just doing the same old thing that we've been doing for 100 years in creating a workforce for the types of jobs that we had back in the 60s.
Well, I kind of disagree with that in terms of thinking critically. Working in an industry like the steel mill, you've got to think critically or you're going to be dead.
Oh, your disagreement is that the jobs require...
there are different types of jobs. Like right now, to produce a implant, like a knee implant, you got to have a little bit more of a steady hand in terms of math and some sciences. But now when you did have those jobs, like working in steel mills, working in the auto industry, you still had to have the ability to critically... And I'm not saying you didn't, you didn't say that, but... I want to make sure that those folks in the 70s
I completely agree. I think one of the differences now, my own brother-in-law is a welder. And when I look at his manuals and the things that he has to do for certifications, I'm like, okay, I couldn't, with my Ivy degree, I couldn't pass those, right? But back, during our parents' times, my father didn't, he was a truck driver. I think he had to take, his CDL test, but there weren't a lot of other certifications and things to, frankly, in some ways, weed people out. Let's just be honest. And so too many of our people, too many of our kids from our communities can't pass some of the certifications, some of the things. And so,
but why not? I mean, the technology is, because the technology is there to pass. So it seems that relatively the ability to obtain what you have has increased with the level of skill that the job requires, or not.
You have to be able to read and pass certification exams. You think about the career and technologies that we're offering now. You can't just go and do the trade, the hands-on manual labor trade. You've got to pass all of the certifications. I'm not saying our parents couldn't have. There weren't as many requirements back then. And at this point, too many of our kids, we were just taking them through our factory model, education system, having them stand in line straight, raise their hand, follow a lot of directions, but not stop and think for themselves about. I mean, I was in college before someone said, "Oh, Egypt is actually in Africa." Nobody's paused to say, think about what that means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is what we're actually trying to back up and teach children about, to make those connections for themselves, to be able to think, analyze, and do complex work, not
run.
not see-spot running, what we had been training them to do, which was stand in line straight, not talk in the hallway and raise their hand when they want to talk.
Right, and not just a series of steps, right? So if you've ever, been in a factory, right, it's, the way they used to be, you're on the assembly line, but you're on this portion of the line, and you know exactly what to do. That doesn't mean that there weren't smart people who worked in the factory. That that's not the idea here. But those jobs no longer exist, where you can also not have gone to college and still get a job that puts your family at least above poverty. Right? Those jobs are just going away. My late father was a mechanic. Even he told me, like, we do old cars. When I started getting old enough and bought a car, and he was like, "It's a lot of computer in that car. That's not what I do." So I had to start taking my car somewhere else. My dad was like, "I do old carburetors, right? What's in your car, I don't do that." It's not, of course.
That's right, because then, those cars did have carburetors. All the old, they had them.
Right.
Yeah, so
before there was electronic fuel.
Right, so he was a mechanic, so he could do that.
That's
but
right. He never went back and got retooled
to do the other thing.
But it sounds to me like then we've got two things working.
Yeah.
Once we get past the social issue, then we have to start working on the middle skills gap and the whole curriculum gap. Because if you're saying that the 12 years and what we teach in those 12 years isn't getting it for the world beyond the 12 years, then we've got to start looking at what a lot of people have already said, training as a mandate beginning at the middle school level for certain skill level positions and how you administer that. So it seems like, we've got once we get everybody in the same room again,
same building,
get everybody in the same room.
Dang building.
We're going to have this discussion about middle skills and community development plus training.
And the two aren't so different, right? I mean, we totally advocate for CTE, right? I mean, so it's not that every single person has to go to college to be successful in life. Not at all. No. But you have to do something, right? I mean, you need some type of trade, skills, something if you want to even think about making it. And it's not that, to your point, if you think about now a lot of the jobs and how you have to think critically, you got to do, this, again, my brother-in-law's welder's manual. I'm like, okay, keep that away. So it's not about tracking. We're absolutely not saying, track one group to see, career and tech, track another group to college ready. We need all kids to rise to this rigorous, more rigorous standards and learn a deeper, curriculum so that they can be prepared for either route that they want to go down.
Well, and just real quickly, studies show that the same skills needed to be successful in career are needed to be successful in college.
Sure.
So this belief that somehow, because some student may want to go immediately into a career out of high school, he or she needs less, exposure to humanities. So, okay, this kid wants to go be some tech.
Right.
Well, we shouldn't teach him or her French. Well, that's ridiculous, right? That stuff is about life. That's exposing kids. So there's no real reason to have these completely separate curricula other than, look, I'm raising my hand. I know I want to be a computer technician, and I know it takes this to do that. Then the school should be providing me with that. I mean, when I leave high school, no one should force me to do anything. But I should be able to say, you know what, I am going to this 4-year college, and I got everything I need from this high school, or I'm going to work for this big factory, and I got everything I need to do that from high school, and quit acting as if those have to necessarily be two different.
Stop being so bougie.
Oh my God!
Stop being so bougie.
Well,
it takes all things and all efforts to make this world work. Right?
I mean, you think when a lot of new companies come into town now, they're sending students who already had their high school diploma to Southwest, and these are factory jobs through like a workforce course because they don't have some of those basic skills that Tomeka was mentioning.
Right.
You are listening to Funky Politics, powered by the Kazukia Network. We've been visiting with Tequilla Banks, Executive Vice President of the TNTP, formerly known as the New Teacher Project, and Tomeka Hart, Memphis' own Senior Program Officer of Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Funky Nassau, Funky Nassau, Funky Nassau, Funky Nassau, Funky Nassau, Funky Nassau, Funky Nassau. Listen, Funky Nassau, Funky
This is DC and Doc Ward talking to you about the great opportunity available for you at Southwest Tennessee Community College.
You can get a business degree. You can open doors to a wide range of opportunities. Engineering and information technicians are in demand to help power manufacturing and logistics. And paralegal studies, man, those majors are in big demand right now. Register now for spring classes starting January 17th. Call 901-333-4399. A wide range of programs for the most in-demand careers are just another reason Southwest Tennessee Community College is your best choice.
In Memphis, there are 116,000 very important young minds. 20,000 of them attend schools in the bottom 5%.
The Memphis Education Fund partners with committed organizations to give these students access to an equitable education.
Their partners work to operate quality schools, recruit, retain, and develop effective teachers and leaders, ensure community voice, and support the needs of the whole child in Shelby County's priority schools.
This is the story of a great people, of hopes and dreams, of challenge and change. It's an American story. The story and struggle that started many centuries ago lives today in the halls and on the walls of the renovated National Civil Rights Museum. Enter the Supreme Court Halls of Justice, sit with Rosa Parks on the Montgomery bus, hear Mahalia Jackson sing at the March on Washington. Plan now to visit the National Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. For more information, log on to civilrightsmuseum.org.